Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So this is probably the fifth topic or the fifth session of the fifth topic. This is the third topic and the fifth session. For the very first topic we had 2 sessions. Similarly for the second topic also we had 2 sessions. And today we wish to speak about dealing with anxiety. So subject matter here is mind management. Mind is a very interesting phenomenon, a phenomenon thing which is given to us, gifted to us. In the very first session titled as Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, those of you who were here, you might remember we are given an analogy of a smartphone. And we made an example, if a smartphone is corrupted, generally what gets corrupted is a software. If the smartphone is corrupted and you hand over a corrupted smartphone to an illiterate by illiterate I mean a person who has never used a smartphone before. And if he begins to use a corrupted smartphone, the individual will think the corrupted smartphone's activities or actions to be the default actions. For example, if you press on 9 and it gives you 7, when a person uses that, then he will think whenever I have to dial 7, I have to press 9. The corrupted situation will become a default condition. Similarly, we said the smartphone teaches us a lot about ourselves. Smartphone functions because it has a hardware, it has a software, and there is a user. Similarly, Vedic science, be any literature within the spectrum of Vedic science, says the same thing. There are 3 levels of our existence. The gross body, that is the hardware that we perceive, with which we perform an action. Then there is a subtle body, which is a software, which is the mind. Mind means thinking, feeling, and willing. All your thinking. Okay, let me make an interesting thing here. There are 4 kinds of sounds that our Vedic science talks about it. The very first sound is called Vaikari, which you are able to hear right now, the gross sound. Second category of sound is called as Madhyame, that is intellectual sound. What intellectual sound means? Should I do this or should I not do this? If I do this, I would have this. If I don't do this, I will have that. How many of you had a situation in your life where there is a sound or the voice within you which tells you, if you do this, you will have this. If you don't do this, you will have it. How many of you have that experience? That is called as Madhyame, intellectual sound. Intelligence, that's the subject matter for today. We're going to talk about it. Intelligence is the decision maker. So that's where the discrimination happens. Then the third level of sound within us is called as Prakriti. That is a sound of the mind. How many of you have heard of desires? Desires popping within us. Which means, oh, can I see this? Can I watch this? Can I eat this? Can I do this and that? How many of you have that experience? You have heard the sound? That is called as mental sound. And this mental sound is with we are greatly affected today. Even you go to sleep, the mind keeps on working. How many of you have observed your mind? If you want, just close your eyes for 5 seconds and take a deep breath and you see how your mind is going back and forth, either in the past, complaining about the mistakes that you did, or the opportunities that you missed, or begins to imagine about the future that you have. If you do this, you will get it. How many of you have that experience? That is a third sound called as Prakriti. And then there is the highest level of sound, what is called as Para, spiritual sound. Just wanted to introduce this. We'll discuss about this subject later on. So, the whole idea of yoga, I'm summarizing this because we have discussed this subject matter before. The whole idea of yoga is to minimize the first 3 sounds. The Vaikari, the Madhyame, the Prakriti. And let Para sound becomes prominent. The spiritual sound vibration become manifest. Okay, let's speak about a little bit sound. To invoke your heart and to invoke your interest in the great science which is found in our Vedic literatures. So let me give an example and see if you relate to it or not. According to Bible, it is said, there was a sound. Let there be a creation. Creation manifested. According to Vedic science, there was a sound. Om. And the creation manifested. That's the very first original sound. Now, the interesting thing about the sound is anything that you see here has originated from the sound. First, sound happens, and then everything else takes place. For example, let's say the hotel that you're sitting in, it also began with a sound. Let there be a hotel. Now you may say, oh, not necessarily, but I told you 4 varieties of sound. One is the external Vaikari, second is the Madhyame intellectual, third is Prakriti, which is desire. Any action cannot happen if there is a desire behind it, yes or no? Unless the hotel owner would have desired, let there be hotel, the hotel would have come. So there was a sound. Let there be something, and that thing manifests. Similarly, the whole science of this, the whole science of yoga actually is to purify the sound, and through same sound vibration, we can connect with the Supreme Consciousness. Therefore, the yogis, if you have ever had an opportunity, probably sitting in a city, you probably never had an opportunity for meeting a yogi, but they are the ones who are quite calm and composed because they have purified these 3 levels of sound. Now, let's come to the subject matter of this mind management. Why we are discussing this mind management? Because the Prakriti, the mental sound, is very much agitated today, very much disturbed today. And therefore, last time when we concluded our discussion, we said, Bhajaure mana, Shinanda Nandana, Abhaya Charanara Vindare. If you want to transcend, not only just get control on your mind, but transcend the mental vibration and the mental sound, take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Consciousness. That was the conclusion of the previous session. So this mind, going back to the example of a smartphone, corrupted software. So we have hardware, the body, the mind is a software, and Atma is the user. If the mind is corrupted, our experience would not be what we want. Nobody in this universe wants suffering. Nobody. Everyone, every action is governed and inspired by seeking for happiness. Yes or no? But do we always get that experience of happiness? Yes or no? Yes or no? Is there anyone who wants suffering? Yes or no? Is there anyone who can avoid suffering? Yes or no? If you think you are the controller of your life, then why do you suffer? The only problem is corrupted software. Because all your desires ultimately manifest to the external world through the medium of the software. When you pick up the smartphone will understand the desire of the user through the software. You dial in the number and it translates that into the software to the hardware, isn't it? And then the function happens. Desire manifests through the mind. If mind is corrupted, nobody could ever be at peace. Let me give an example. It's a true story of a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. So there was a lady by the name of Preeti. A young, beautiful girl got married to a boy and he lived with his parents. Very nice family of the boy. However, somehow the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law did not go well together. Every day they would fight. Every day they would fight. And they would fight. But बेचारा पिस्ता कौन था? माँ का बेटा, पत्नी का पति. घर में आके both the sides will stretch him. The wife would say, your mother is like this. The mother would say, you got a very bad wife. And the poor husband or the poor son was getting really trouble. It went on like this for 3 months. And it was enough is enough. This lady, Preeti, had come from the background of Ayurvedic doctors. So her father's friend was a very noted and famous Ayurvedic doctor. She came back to her hometown. She went and met the doctor, the uncle of her. And she narrated the whole ordeal, the whole story of her challenge with her in-laws. And she said, I need a solution. What solution? I want you to give me a poison that I can feed to her. And for once for all, find a solution. I cannot tolerate her anymore. and my husband is not willing to leave his parents, and come and live separate. So uncle was like, oh really? He said, well, give me a minute. Let me go and prepare a poison for your mother-in-law. He went inside. After a few minutes he came out and he said, I have prepared a poison. If anyone ever consumes, there is no chance of survival. However, I warn you, make sure you give it in a very small dosages every day. Because if you give it in large quantity and your mother-in-law dies, but natural suspicion will go to you. You'll get into a trouble. So I want you to take a very, very small pinch of this poison, feed to your mother-in-law for days together. And while you're doing so, act very nicely. Act very obedient to your mother-in-law so that nobody would ever have a suspicion on you that you killed your mother-in-law. And the daughter-in-law, her name was Preeti, she was extremely excited. She said, fantastic, this works. If just for a few weeks or few months, if I have to act such a way that afterwards my mother-in-law's business is over, why not? So be it. She came back to home every morning while preparing a tea or a coffee for her mother-in-law. She'll add a pinch of that poison. She did it for a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. Like this, it went on for 6 months. But something changed during the span of 6 months. Because now the daughter-in-law became very obedient to mother-in-law. Mother-in-law also stopped fighting with the daughter-in-law. She became very kind and considerate, sensitive to the needs of the daughter-in-law. And by the end of 6 months, they both started treating each other as a mother and daughter. And after the 6th month, the daughter-in-law realized, oh my goodness, I had been giving a poison to my mother-in-law. Any time she can die, I need to rush back and get an antidote. She went back, running to hometown, went and met her uncle, and she said, uncle, please, I need your help. I need an antidote. Uncle said, antidote? For what? The poison that you gave, my relationship with my mother-in-law has become like of a mother. I cannot live without her. I cannot bear the thought that I killed her. Uncle said, what are you talking about? I never gave you a poison. I gave you a vitamin. It was an immune booster. And the daughter-in-law, the Preeti, was shocked. She said, what? The doctor said, yes. But you told me I gave you a poison. He said, no. There was no poison anywhere except for the poison in your mind. The poison existed where? In your mind. Nowhere there was a poison. I never. But because you followed my instruction and you obeyed your mother-in-law, look what is the scope of your relationship now. Where was the problem? Corrupted software. The problem was nowhere else. The problem was within oneself. Therefore, we have assembled here to speak on the subject matter titled as mind management. Our responses can bring out the best or worst from others. Be watchful of your responses. We cannot change the circumstances, what happens around us, but we do have a control on how we react. How we react is how we create our destiny. So that control on our response is what we have. Unfortunately, most of the people don't even have that control now. You know, animals and humans, what's the difference between humans and animals? Animals act by instinct. They have a zero response time. Anything, they immediately react. Humans have also become like that, yes or no? Very short, short-tempered, highly agitated, you little bit poke them and immediately there is an outburst of an anger. No. Therefore it is said, the freedom of our life and the future that we hope and had been preparing for, that great future lies between the space between the response and the space between, the trigger and response. If you can use that space effectively and efficiently, which means if you can give response thoughtfully, our life would be entirely changed. That's what happened with the daughter-in-law. What did she change? Her response? Only change that happened with her was Change of response. The doctors told her, become obedient. Her response changed. Because the response changed, everything around her changed. So, let's come with the today's subject matter titled as Dealing with Anxiety. Techniques for Managing a Hijacked Mind. How many of you have had experience with anxiety? 100%. नहीं उठा रहे तो साफ साफ झूठ बोल रहे हो. ये क्वेश्चन पूछने का ही नहीं बनता है. या तो आपने हाथ ये सोच के उठाया प्रभु जी ये का क्वेश्चन है पूछने वाला, किससे क्वेश्चन उठा रहे हो, है ना. ये बोलो कितनी एंग्जाइटी का लेवल है, ये पूछो तो बात है. सुपर डुपर डुपर, what is the level of anxiety? Okay, anyone here, what could potentially be the cause of an anxiety? What could potentially be the cause of an anxiety? Yes, please.
Us having expectations and circumstances are not meeting.
Okay, so our expectations are not meeting up, that leads to anxiety. Yeah. Okay, what else? Yes. Huh? Uncertainty, absolutely. Uncertainty leads to anxiety. Fear leads to anxiety. Yes. Stress. Yes. Overthinking. Okay, what else? Fear exists in mind. Overthinking because of mind. Everything is related to mind only. If you fix the mind, you will not have anxiety. So here, I'm going to speak something what Lord Shri Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita. Let's take a look at it. So the subject matter, dealing with anxiety, will come to the subject matter at the end of the session. But here you're going to talk about something, a very important issue or a problem which is raised in Bhagavad Gita. Particularly while dealing with the mind. Arjuna is standing in front of Krishna at the battlefield of Kurukshetra. At one point of his discussion with Krishna, he raised a question and he said, please repeat after me, Athakena prayukto yam papam charati purushaha anichannapi vashneya baladiva niyojitaha. Atha kena prayukto yam. He said, Krishna, why? By what? Not why. By what? Atha kena prayukto yam papam charati purushaha. By what one is impelled. Charati means to perform. Charati means to walk. By what one is impelled to perform a sinful action. Anavichannapi vashneya. Although he did not want to do it. But balad eva niyojita. He was forcefully pushed into doing it. Thoda samajh aa raha hai? I'll give you a very common day case study here. Let's take a translation. O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one is impelled to commit sinful act, even unwillingly as if engaged by a force. Let's take a look at it. For example, let's say a person has been diagnosed with a serious lung infection. His family members, his well-wishers, his friends, his doctor, everyone have pleaded and requested him, don't ever smoke again. If you do so, you will die. The person knows this very clearly, I have done enough of it, now no more. However, he is walking on the street, he sees a smoke shop, he sees somebody smoking there. And he is getting pushed towards a smoking joint. Within the mind he knows that, oh, I should not do it. If I do it, I would die. But he is still pushed towards a smoking joint and helplessly he purchases smoke, puts in his mouth and smokes it. Let's take an example of a diabetic patient. He knows that very well, if I eat sugar again, if it's a serious situation, I would get into a serious implication. But still, he gets pushed into eating it and then he regrets. How many of you have had an experience where you knew I should not do it, but you were helpless and you did it and you regretted it? How can I do it? I knew this is not to be done. How many of you have that experience? Raise your hand. सच बोलो. 200%. हाथ नहीं उठा रहे तो शर्म आ रही है. जरा हाथ उठा लो. जरा भक्तों को दिखाओ कौन कौन हाथ उठा रहे हैं. All right, that's the point here about. So, is it a valid question? Anyone has thought about it? Because we get into this situation and again, that is why it fills our life with anxiety, stress, fear. Any thoughts how to deal with it? Well, what thoughts? If you had a thought, you would have solved it. Nobody would have solved it. Let's see what Krishna says. Let's take a look at it. So that's what we are paraphrasing. So Arjuna said, when a smoker knows the dangers, we have talked about it, what the power force is. So Krishna is going to give an answer for it. And the point here is there is something within us which really pushes us to get it. And we are helplessly pushed into it and then we regret. So while answering this question, Krishna would answer this question in the very next verse. Before that, we want to pay attention very briefly something which Krishna speaks again and again through his instructions in Bhagavad Gita, and that is on the subject matter of lifestyle. Lord Shri Krishna, through his discussions across Bhagavad Gita, he makes a point about, what you eat, how you dress, how you speak, how you behave, your whole overall lifestyle determines what you do. What kind of personality you have created by your repeated actions is what you condition yourself to. And you force yourself to helplessly act in that manner. So what we're going to discuss over here is not just something like an allopathic medicine. You take medicine for 5 days and you cure yourself. It's something which we need to understand and gradually apply in our life to bring about the change. Because the power that Krishna is going to introduce us to, which pushes us into doing this sinful activity, is too powerful just to hear and fix it. Let's see what Krishna talks about it. Please repeat after me. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Little loudly, please. Just reciting Bhagavad Gita shloka specifies the mind. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajaguna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapma Kama Esha Krodha Esha. Esha means certainly. Immediate response of Arjuna, Atakena Priyuktyam Papam Charati Purushaha Anichan Api Vashnam. Baladiva Niyojita. What is that bala? What is that force? Kam, lust, which is accompanied with his younger brother Anuj, that is anger. Kamesha Krodesha Rajo Guna Samudbhava, which is born of mode of passion. It behooves me to look at the matter of modes of consciousness here, very shortly here. How many of you have seen situations of people reacting differently to a similar situation? How many have observed? Everyone would have observed. Example, in a traffic situation, some people really become frustrated, cranky, they're honking. Some people are oblivious. Some people are looking in their social media, whatnot, isn't it? Similar situation, people react differently. That subject matter is discussed in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna raises a point. Why people react differently? According to medical science or according to modern science, we are nothing but a combination of DNA, RNA, whatnot. If we are made up of the same software, why these machines are giving different responses? So therefore Krishna says, because there is something called as modes of consciousness. Sattagun, Rajagun, Tamagun. Mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. Let me give an example. If somebody has a prominence of this particular mode of goodness, if he is put into a challenging situation, generally the response of such a person would be, he would think cool and calm and will think about how to solve a problem rather than reacting to a problem. For example, let's say there is a cap seller going through the forest, decides to take a rest in the forest, and during the rest time, monkeys comes and steals all the caps and goes away. The cap seller wakes up, he sees none of the caps are available. He's supposed to go and sell and make a living out of it. So a person who is in mode of goodness will think about the situation and will realize, oh ho, the monkey is a good imitator. And he has his own cap. He takes out a cap from his pocket, waves it up in the sky and throws it on the ground. All the monkey sees it. They also wave and throw it on the ground. The person goes, collects on the cap, walk away. Possible? Imagine a person who is driven by mode of passion consciousness. When he wakes up and sees all the caps are gone, the reaction would be anger. He will become angry. Kamesha, Krodesha. He'll become angry. He will look around. He'll see what stones are available. He'll pick a stone and start throwing at the monkey. He will start hurling abuses at the monkey. Same situation, different response. And then mode of ignorance. Person who has predominance of tamo guna, a mode of ignorance, when he wakes up from the sleep and he looks around, the caps are gone. मेरा तो जीवन ही बेकार है, मेरे संग शुरुआत से अन्याय हुआ है, मेरा तो जीवन जीने का मतलब ही नहीं है, मुझे तो ये कर लेना चाहिए, वो कर लेना चाहिए, my life is useless, मेरे संग हमेशा अन्याय होता है, हे प्रभु तूने मेरे संग ऐसा क्यों किया? Have you seen people like this? That's what it is. You have mode of goodness, you have mode of passion, you have mode of ignorance. So Krishna is saying those who are in mode of passion, this force which pushes them is born of mode of passion consciousness, and that is called as lust. The Supreme Personality of God said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, which is all devouring. Mahashano means all devouring, destructive. Mahapapma, the most sinful. Vidhi ka matlab hota hai jano, iha. This vairi is your enemy. Let's take a look at it, how it functions. Let's do a quick analysis of how mind, intelligence and senses interact. To save our time, I'm not going to draw today, but I will hopefully show you. So, I'll just show you this graph quickly, what's happening over here. Those of you who attended previous sessions, you'll understand the flow charts. So this is the subtle body, intelligence, mind, and this is the senses which refers to the body. The body has 5 senses: knowledge acquiring senses and the working senses. What are the knowledge acquiring senses? Nose, eyes, ears, tongue, touch. This is called as knowledge acquiring senses. Remember last time we had drawn a graph of how your mind gets trained when I spoke about the example of a horror movie. Through this knowledge acquiring senses, if you give a negative input, you create a negative situation of your mind. And through the same mind or through the same sense, if you give a positive input, you create a positive situation of the mind. Have you ever wondered, first of all, let me ask this way, do you think the crimes are increasing or reducing? How many of you say the crime rate, criminality, abuse and exploitation of people is increasing day by day? Please raise your hand. Why? We are told our ancestors were living in Stone Age era. We are becoming civilized. Is this civilized? Let me ask you, what do you think, what is the one biggest common factor for the increase in crime? Poor school education, TV and media, or the boys and the girls which are born in today's time, the genes are corrupted, so therefore they are more criminal minded. Among the 3 options, which you think, which is our topmost reason? The first, I even forgot, what was the first? What is the first pointer? Poor education. The education is not good, so that is what the whole and sole responsible. Second, because of the TV and media, what is shown on the TV and media. Or the third is because the genes are more corrupted today, therefore they function corruptly. What do you think? What is the most? How many of you say the first? Poor education. The topmost reason. How many of you say second? Because of what is shown on the TV and media, the amount of violence, sexual activities, abuses which are shown not only on TV and media, even the video games today are the highest reason. Statistically, it is all because of what violence and corruption and exploitation shown in the TV and media, because of which your mind is getting corrupted. Because you input negative, you create a negative situation. That's the reason. Just like, people these days are not afraid of crime. And you see more and more vulgar crime, and the next criminal activity that happens, you see, if you look into the case study, the person is quoting that if you don't agree to my terms and conditions, I would do the same thing that happened with so and so person. So what your criminal laws or criminal system is bringing justice. It's just because we are speaking about it, people get an idea and they think they can also do it. And even in all these case studies, if you look at it, they have got the idea to perform such a criminal activity from such another movie. For example, the unfortunate the situation of the case of Delhi, where a young girl was butchered into pieces. That was not the only incident. They like that several incidents were there because there was a TV series. Does anyone know the name of it? Yes, there was a TV series, a show, and I believe an American show, a criminal show where a similar incident was shown. And that led to such a inspiration. So what you see is what you create in now. So we have discussed that about. So it's the TV and media which corrupts. So if you give a negative input, you create a negative perception. Anyways, negative mindset. So this is knowledge acquiring senses. Then we have working senses by which we perform actions. That is hands, feet you walk, tongue you speak and taste, genitals and the rectums for emitting the waste, etc. The knowledge acquiring senses is an input device which gives input to your mind, and the output comes through the working senses through which you work. So what is mind? Mind is a place of thoughts, thinking, feeling and willing. So when the eye sees or the nose smells, when the ears hear any sound, then it goes through the mind based on its past thoughts or experiences, and analysis happens. For example, very simple thing. Let's say you look at the color over here. How do you know this is a gray color? How do you know this is a gray color? This information has been already processed. Therefore, you are able to identify. Is that a very simple concept? Now, when you grew up, you were told this is number 1. This is A for apple. Why you didn't identify A for apple then? Because that was a fresh information. So when you look at things around here, you can say this is this, because why? Because all that information is stored in your mind. And when information goes, it is processed by the mind. And if it is identified, then you have a response. Is that making sense? However, mind is only a processing unit. Mind does not make a decision. After identifying it, it goes to the intelligence, and intelligence is the king maker, is the decision maker. And it makes a decision, sends the information back to the mind, and that mind instructs again to the working senses, which now acts and perform an action. This is your internal CPU. Sounds interesting? You have a working CPU within yourself. This is how every information is processed like that. So what else do I want to speak about? I'll come back to it later on. Okay. Let's do a practical case study of how this mind, intelligence and senses work with each other. Let's take a case of Mithulal Mithai Wala. Okay, if in case you're from North India, you will find this name a little familiar. So, I want all of you to visualize. Sit calmly and visualize now. Imagine you're walking across the street, it's a post office hour, and a nice fresh breeze is blowing, and you're just about to come to your home, but right at the corner of the street is your famous Mithai Wala, Mithulal Mithai Wala. It's an evening time, and he's frying a fresh kachori with imarti. If you're North Indian, I don't know, South Indian, maybe masala dosa. For Gujarati or for Bombay Wala, bada pav, something. Okay, let's a little bit change the situation. Imagine you're going out of the office and you have to catch a bus and auto to reach your house. And then right at the corner of your office, you see this Mithulal Mithai Wala, and he's frying fresh kachori and imarti and whatnot. So you see, information goes through your mind, and the mind processes. And he says, oh yeah, looks like fresh kachori, isn't it? Identified. Imarti, so good. Now your mind is a storehouse of desires. And the mind then identifies, oh, I have a longing desire. Last time when I ate it, it was so nice. Wish I could have it once more. But the mind is not the decision maker. So mind sends an information to the intelligence saying that, I want it. The information goes to the intelligence. Intelligence thinks now, oh, you want this mithai and the snack. Well, let us check how much money you have in your pocket. So intelligence sends the information to the mind. Mind sends the information to which sense now? Hands. Your hands goes into the pocket. You take out your wallet and there are 80 rupees. You see 80 rupees, information goes to the mind and mind says, well, to the intelligence there are 80 rupees. Now intelligence goes again into the analysis. Oh ho, 80 rupees. 30 rupees bhada bus ka. 40 rupee भाड़ा ऑटो का, 70 रुपए तो कंज्यूम हो गए, बचे कितने? 10 रुपए. You have an opportunity, maybe not to get both the items but one item. You can try your best luck. Information comes back to the mind and from the mind now it goes to where? To the feet. Now the feet takes you next to the Mithulal Mithai wala. Why? Because you want to find out what is the cost. Would it fit in 10 rupees or not? You go to Mithulal Mithai wala, from a distance you only saw. But when you go to Mithulal Mithai wala, now you can smell also. Your mind is super agitated. Not only you're seeing, but you're smelling. Two senses are attacking your mind. Now again, because you're close to the shop, again the message goes to intelligence. Intelligence says, well, you're here now, ask. What's the cost? Now which sense becomes activated? The tongue. It begins to vibrate. Kitne ka hai? And you ask. And the shopkeeper of mithai wala says, 15 rupees ka hai. Now information goes back to the mind. 15 rupees goes to the intelligence. Intelligence just plus minus. 15 minus 10 means 5 rupees ka loss. 5 in deficit. What to do? Then again information comes to the tongue. भाई साहब बहुत महंगा दे रहे हो, 10 रुपए का दो ना. And the bargaining begins. Sounds familiar? So imagine you bargain and you were successful in bargaining and the person says, take it. He hands over you in a plate. It comes in front of your eyes. Immediately your hands get into an action, you pick it up. Now imagine what all senses will be active. Your eyes are active, your nose is active and tongue is willing to vibrate again. अरे मुंह में डालो इतना वेटिंग क्या है. Your hands are active. Everything within you is super surcharged. How many of you had that experience? You feel like everything is enlivened within you suddenly, and you put into your mouth, and suddenly a saliva is generated. Message goes to your mind. Mind says, "वाह, पिछली बार का अच्छा था, इस बार का मजेदार है, मजा आ गया." And you consume, you finish it. And then what happens? So mind had a desire to eat it. You ate it. But now what happens with the mind? One more desire. For the time being when you ate it, you're satisfied. You pay 10 rupees, you walk away from there. And then you go with your bus and the auto and everything. But do you think your desire is satisfied? The other occasion when you will look at the shop again the mind will say, Mithulal Mithai wala. I have a longing desire. You don't say like this, but this is how it happens. This is called as repeated action. How many of you have done anything repeatedly? Maybe it can be a Pepsi. It could be a snack that you eat. And you eat it repeatedly over a span of days, weeks, months, and lifetimes. How many have done that? My question is, that desire is never fulfilled. You keep on longing and chasing after it. So in essence, this is how the mind and intelligence and senses interact. Is it making sense? Let me go back again over here. This is how your mind, which is the master, intelligence, which is the master, instructs the mind, and this is how the mind through the knowledge and working senses interacts with the sense objects. Look at the desire. If desire, okay, we'll talk about the desire in a short while. We'll come back to it later on. Okay, let's move forward with this. So, Mithulal Mithai wala. So, very interesting verse comes in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, please repeat after me. Ye hi samsparshja bhoga. अरे क्या भूख लग रही है? प्रसाद का उदाहरण समझ के जोर से बोलो भाई. ये ही संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुख योनियायेवते आदि अंतवंत कौन्तेया नातेषु रमते बुधाहा ये ही संस्पर्श जाब होगा. संस्पर्श means contact. जाब होगा दुख योनीय एवते. As soon as a person comes in contact with the sense objects in Sanskrit is called as Vishayan. Very interesting. The word for sense objects in Sanskrit is Vishayan. Vishayan word is formed from the root word Vish, means poison. Those sense objects are nothing but the objects of poison, which means suffering. Yehi samsparsh jab hoga dukhi honi evate. As soon as you come in contact with any sense object, maybe the imarti, the samosa and whatnot, anything of this world, it only gives rise to suffering. Why? You may say, "Arey, मैं गुलाब जामुन खा रहा हूँ, मुझे तो आनंद का एहसास हो रहा है." Why is it suffering? Agreed? You like something, you get it, you are happy. How is it a suffering? There is a suffering. Pay attention to the third line. Adi antavanta kaunteya. It has a beginning, it has an end. It is not eternal. Even if, let me give an example. Imagine gulab jamun is your favorite sweet and you have not eaten it for a long time. Particularly those who are coming from a distant places, you may have some very favorite sweet shop of yours where this particular item is made nicely. And you are out here for working and your mother or sister, somebody comes and brings that sweet box for you. How many of you will be excited? Wow, my favorite sweet from that sweet shop. Everyone will be excited about it. So imagine a scenario where you're sitting down and you have been served prasadam. And that prasadam, your favorite sweet gulab jamun is being served. So when serving is happening, apparently everyone was served 2 gulab jamun. Or you only were served 1 gulab jamun. कितना बुरा लगेगा ना? खाते खाते दूसरे की प्लेट में देखेंगे, उसको भी दो, इसको भी दो, मैं ही अकेला. बुरा लगेगा? And imagine in the meantime the server gets to know he made a mistake. Oh, how can I miss him? I miss this gentleman. I only gave him 1 gulab jamun. Let me serve him more gulab jamun. He comes back to you. He says, "Sorry sir, please take 2 more." How many of you will be happy? बोलेंगे हाँ सही करा. Yes or no? But he says no problem. He makes another 2. He comes back to you. So he says, "No sir, take more. I'll give you 5 more." Now first you got 1 piece, you were not happy. You got 2, you were happy. Now he gives you 5 gulab jamun. And you're saying, नहीं, दूसरों को भी खिलाओ. मेरा ही ध्यान रखोगे केवल. दूसरों की भी चिंता करो. So you become quite compassionate philanthropic. No, आप खाओ. He feeds you, pushes down your throat 5 more gulab jamun. You have had 8 pieces of gulab jamun. आदि अंतवंत कौंतेया. आपकी जो खुशी थी अब दुख में बदलने लगी है. He comes back again for another round. He says, नहीं भाई साहब, मुझसे बहुत बड़ा कुकर्म हुआ है. मैंने बहुत बड़ी गलती करी आपके प्रति अपराध करके कि आपको मैंने सिर्फ 1 गुलाब जामुन खिलाया. आज मैं उसकी पूरी पूर्ति करूंगा. अब आप 10 और खाओ. और आपका मुंह पकड़ के खड़े हुए 2 लोग और मुंह में धकेला जा रहा है. Imagine you have eaten 20 gulab jamun. How many of you think you're going to vomit now? Raise your hand. That same object of happiness became a cause of suffering. The happiness is never there. Happiness was never there. It was in your mind. It was an imagined pleasure. If I have it, I will be happy. If that happiness was in the object, then the more you get it, more you should be happy. It was never in it. It was in your imagination. This is why it is called as imagined pleasure. Therefore, even if you get it, you're never satisfied. Imagine you had been longing to buy a new iPhone. But the moment you got the iPhone, or maybe the car, maybe the bike, were you content after that? Or you said, okay, bas ab kuch nahi. Bas isi iPhone ke sang jeevan bitane wala hu. Anyone ever thought like this? After 6 months, you saw another advertisement for iPhone and you felt like, oh, I should go for next iPhone. How many you raised? Raise your exam hands here. So how do you say your happiness was in the sense object? It was only imagined. Therefore, advertisement works. Therefore, advertising agencies make money out of you. Because they keep on bombarding the advertisements saying that if you have it, how happy you would be. Look at the billboards. I mean, you have to buy a house. Why put a semi-clad lady on a billboard saying that, आओ हमारे घर में? I mean, यार वो शादीशुदा आदमी है. What do you mean by being on the billboard? Does it make sense? Think about it. It is just to entice the mind. And you will have a very beautiful, nice family photo there, as if they've gone on a Caribbean island sitting next to the beach, saying that if you come and buy a house in our place, your life will be so wonderful. How many of you have seen those kind of? It is just to entice and attract. You go in any apartment, you still have to pay maintenance fees. You still have to deal with the management issues, society issues. Doesn't changes anything. But that's how our mind cheats. That's the point here. All right, let's move forward. So, Lord Shri Krishna goes again on the subject matter of Kamesha, Krodesha, Rajoguna, Samadva. So Arjun thought, my dear Lord, the lust. It is lust which is all devouring force. How does it cover us? Is it that it covers everyone equally? Lord Krishna says, no, it doesn't cover everyone equally. Everyone has the influence of it to a different degree. And Krishna gives three analogies here. He says, just like dhumena vriyate vahane, just like the fire is covered by the smoke. So some people have that much influence. Just like the womb, or not the womb, embryo covered by the womb. Like that. And third, another example he gives, like the mirror covered over by dust. So all these different examples have different degrees of covering of the lust. Then Krishna looks at Arjuna and says, are you frightened to know enough about this enemy of yours? Arjuna says, well, not. Can you tell me something more? Krishna says, well, let me tell you the truth about this. Krishna says, please repeat after me. Avritam jnanametena Nanino nityaverina Kamarupena kaunteya Dushpurena nalena cha Jnanino nityaverina, second line. Jnanino means to know, Nitya means forever, Verina means enemy. Krishna says this lust is an enemy which is of eternal nature. I mean, these days we book our tickets through the online platform. How many of you have gone to the station to book tickets? Raise your hand. Have you had that experience? Have you stand in a line to book tickets? And थोड़ा बहुत सा धक्का मुक्की हो जाए, कोई आगे पीछे निकल जाए तो हल्ला मच जाता था. Imagine you're standing in a line and somebody pushes you and he comes in front of you. You'll be angry with that person, correct? You might curse that person, why did you do like this? But the moment you get your ticket, you forget about that animosity, you walk away, right? That is one kind of animosity. Other kind of animosity is like Bombay ka supari. Somebody gives you supari on your name. You understand supari, underworld language? And there's a person with a gun in his hand chasing after you. Well, that's also not eternal enemy, because that person or the rogue can only chase you in this lifetime. When you die, that's over. But Krishna is saying Nitya Verina, which means is an enemy which chases you life after life. जीवन के साथ, जीवन के बाद. LIC नहीं, काम ऐशा उसका नाम है. LIC वालों ने यहीं से उठाया. ज्ञानिनो नित्य वैरिना काम रूपेण कांतेया. Arjuna, this is called as काम. Lust. What is lust? I'll explain now. Dushpurena nalena cha. You can never extinguish it. The more you try to satisfy it, the more it wants. It can never be satisfied. Desire. When desire is fulfilled, person becomes proud. I did it. And then desire plus one. For example, you struggled hard, you worked hard to get your educational degree with an hope that you get a job. You got a job? Did you settle in your job? How many of you by now have changed 2 or 3 companies if you have been working for more than 5 years? Dushpurena nalena cha. No company can satisfy you. It just doesn't work. That's what happened. You keep on changing. Now, the desire, when desire gets fulfilled, it leads to pride. When desire is not fulfilled, what happens? Frustration and anger. And the desire remains as it is. It is not that you can give up desire. Therefore, Krishna is saying, Jnana Nitya Vairina. Dushpurena Nalena Cha. How it is Dushpurena, never satisfied? Imagine 25th December, New Year's sale, and you had been working very hard, you wanted to buy a Maruti Swift model. Finally, on 15th of December, your loan gets sanctioned, and you take an advantage of December bonanza, the New Year bonanza, and you get 10% discount on the model. 2022 model, 23, so let's say 22 model. On 25th December, you go to the Maruti showroom with your family and get a nice photo clicked, and you are proud. I did it. Yes, you'll have that sense of accomplishment. It's not a small thing, spending lakhs of rupees. Very confidently, proudly sit in a car and you're driving. I mean, how many of you feel like as if you won the World Cup? Finally, I got my thing which I had been desiring for so long. Yes, makes sense. You'll have that sense of pride, and you're very confidently, comfortably driving, and you take a turn to Hinjawadi Chowk. Let's say you're staying in Blue Ridge, and you're right at the corner of the street to take a turn to Blue Ridge, and there you see a big billboard. Aa raha hai 2023 new model of Maruti Swift with 25% discount. कितने लोगों का जलने वाला है? हाथ खड़ा करो. Yes or no? Dushpurena na lena cha. Can never be satisfied. It is keeps on running. That's what Krishna says. It is an eternal enemy. It burns like fire. Which burns like fire. So when you fulfill the desire, it is just like pouring in petrol. And it burns, it blazes more. It can never be satisfied like that. So, how do we defeat this enemy? Baladiva niyojita. What is that force? Lust. What is a lust? Lust is nothing but desire. A gross meaning of a lust is sexual attraction. That is one aspect of it. That is also a desire. So how Krishna describes here lust is to be this desire for sense objects which keeps a living entity bound to the conditions of this world. So question arises, how can I overpower this bala? Baladiva niyojita? How can I defeat lust? Then Krishna begins the solution. Are you okay? Did you understood what is that force? How many of you see a need to defeat that force and take a life into your hands? Raise your hand. Or you think, Prabhuji, bahut ho gaya, jeene do na yaar. वैसे भी खिंच रही थी गाड़ी खिंचती रहेगी क्या प्रॉब्लम है ठीक है So first Krishna says where does the enemy reside? Please repeat after me. Nobadhir Asyadhishtanam uchyate Ete vimohyati yesha Jnanam avritya dehinam. So what are the places? If you want to defeat an enemy, you need to know what is the hiding place. So how do you defeat this enemy called as lust, which forces us to make wrong choices again and again? Krishna says, first identify the sitting places, and the sitting places are the senses, the mind and intelligence. All these three places are the sitting place of your enemy. Now you know you can act. Let me give an example to help you understand that how we are compromised by it. Imagine a few days down the line, there's a 15th August, let's say 4 days from now, there's a 15th August celebration, and you happen to be the DIG of police at Delhi. You are in charge of the whole security measures of the event of 15th August. You're sitting in your office, you just had concluded a meeting, you verified and saw all the security arrangement, everything seems pakka. And suddenly on your landline phone, a call comes, the phone rings. You look into the number, and the number seems to be coming from Pakistan. You picked up the phone. आ रहे हैं हम, बचा लो, बचा सकते हो. टुप, फोन कट जाता है. As an open threat, on 15th August, we are coming, we're going to blow up your event, do whatever you want. And the DIG thinks, well, I can deal with the local, luche muche thief. How I'm going to deal with the trained terrorist? Let me call the army in action. And you call the army chief, inform the whole situation. You hand over the whole scenario, the security of that 15th August event to the army chief because you are trained to deal with terrorists. So let you handle it. Army chief gets into the action. He draws a plan and he decides pakka security so that no terrorist can enter. And he makes a 3-level security. What is the 3-level security? Anyone has to enter for the 15th August celebration. There will be a first checkpoint which would be a metal detector so that no physical bomb or any kind of bomb can enter. Good enough? Even if something have happened, somebody have passed through or bypassed the first gate, then there is a second security checkpoint where every individual will be frisked personally. The whole body would be checked, the luggage would be checked if he's carrying anything. Sounds good? What is the chances now carrying a bomb? Even if you're carrying a bomb on your chest, we call a human bomb, still cannot hide it. Now you still have a third security gate where your ID would be checked. And the brigadier sitting there would make a random decision to allow you or not to allow you. Even if you pass through the first 2 gates, your whole profile would be checked here. Your background would be verified, and now the brigadier sitting on this gate personally would make a choice to give you permission to enter or not. How many of you think this is fantastic? Hardly any scope of any terrorist entering now. Yes or no? Raise your hand, you think you are confident of attending the 15th August event now. You can go now because there's a good enough security measure. Alright, let's walk onto the 15th August event. Let's see what happens. So a lot of people are lined up, they're going for the 15th August event, and there is a man with the long hairs and a big beard and a skull cap on his head and big long coat and having a briefcase in his hand with a very grim, sad, ugly looking face. He's walking towards the gate number 1. As soon as he reaches the gate number 1, he winces his eyes at the security guard to signal him, switch off the metal detector. He switches off the metal detector, and this individual who was carrying a bag crosses through the first security gate. Your security is bypassed. Why? Because the security personnel at the security gate is collaborator with this particular individual. Now this individual goes to the second security checkpoint. There he goes. He is frisked. His bag is kept on the table. The security guard comes, open the bag. He said, what? 3 bombs? तेरे को तो 5 लाने को बोला था, 3 ही लेकर आया. कोई बात नहीं. Gate number A, B, C पे लगा दो. Closes the box and you go inside. Again the gate 2 you bypassed. Why? Because the security personnel at gate 2 was also party of that whole conspiracy. Now what about the third gate where the brigadier is sitting? You go to the third gate, you come over there, and the brigadier called for it. Who is this gentleman? Looks at the ID and the brigadier says, all right, आने में बहुत समय लगा दिया. Security tight होने वाली है, जाओ फटाफट बॉम्ब लगा दो और निकलो यहाँ से. Your security failed? Despite having a foolproof security, why your security failed? Only one reason. Because at all the checkpoints, all the security persons were collaborator or were part of the conspiracy, isn't it? Similarly, when Krishna says, Indriyani manobuddhir, asya dishtanam uchyate, where is the enemy reside? The senses, the mind, and the intelligence. So any wrong information has to come. It goes without any hindrance. Why? Because the lust is sitting there. Therefore today people you should ask the seniors actually, those who are probably your grandparents and whatnot, they would look at the generation today and say how shameless people have become. They are performing such a heinous activity, such a shameless actions, yet they have no regret only. Earlier, at least people, if you would make a mistake, you will have some sense of regret, you will have some sense of a feeling that I did wrong. But today, nothing. This is how the overexposure to TV and media have blunted our senses. We have got so much infatuated with the things of this world, we have become to one extent people have become shameless. In other words, what I mean to indicate about shameless is we so easily get carried away by senses. And that's the reason the life is not in our control. Is it making kind of sense here? How far we have become? Because of this. So these are the sitting places. Purport. The enemy has captured different strategic positions in the body of the conditioned soul, and therefore Lord Krishna is giving hints of those places so that one who wants to conquer the enemy may know where he can be found. So now if you want to defeat this Baladiva Niyojita, which is lust, what you need to do? You need to fix intelligence, change the security guard at the gate 3, 2 and 1, fix your intelligence, fix your mind, fix your senses. And fixing these three things is what yoga is all about. Yoga is not about physical well-being, that is a side product. The yoga, the pranayama, breathing exercises, the meditation, the chanting is all meant for purifying the senses, the mind, and intelligence. I'll tell you how in a short while. So, the battle plan, fight against the enemy. First, identify the hideouts. We know now the senses, mind, and intelligence. What is the second battle plan? Krishna says, will you repeat after me? Tasmat tvam indriyani adau niyamaya bharata shava papamanam prajahiyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Very interesting thing Krishna says. Therefore, tasmat tvam, you, O Arjuna, in the very beginning, curbed this great symbol of sin by regulating the senses. First, if you can tighten up the security at the gate number 1, everything else can follow. Because mind and intelligence are subtle. It takes time to understand and deal with it. But senses are easy. You can make a decision what to see, not to see. You can make a decision what to hear, not to hear. Yes or no? Krishna says regulate the senses. Therefore, what is the first 2 fundamental steps of yoga? Yama and niyama. What not to do and what to do. This is what? Regulating the senses. So the battle plan, step number 2, regulate the senses of the 3 senses which are the easiest to control, that is the senses. Hare Krishna. Then Krishna says next, Indriyani parani ahu Indriyebhya param manaha Manasastu para buddhi Yo buddhihi paratastu sa. Third chapter, 42nd verse, Krishna says, the working senses are superior to the dull matter. Mind is greater than the senses. Intelligence is higher than the mind. And soul is even higher than the mind. The soul is even higher than the mind. The question comes, soul, whom does it belong to? Please repeat after me. Mamaivam sujiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashashtani indriyani prakritisani karshati. Manashashta indriyani, with 6 senses including mind, prakritisthani karshati. Arjuna, why are you struggling in life? Why? Let's take a look at the translation. Mamevamsa jivaleka jiva bhute sanatana. Krishna says, Arjuna, every living entity is my part and parcel. Our parents have given birth to a body, not to a soul. Soul belongs to whom? Krishna says, it is my part and parcel. Now Krishna is making a point, Arjuna, why are you struggling? Arjuna says, I'm not struggling. Krishna says, but you are struggling. Imagine Krishna tells you, you are struggling. How many of you would agree or disagree? How many of you say, yes? If Krishna have to tell you now you are struggling. Or how many of you would disagree? I am not struggling. I am having a fantastic time of my life. So what do you think you're going to say? I'm not saying that. Look at the last 2 lines. Manahashashrani indriyani Prakriti sthani kashyati. You are struggling. Krishna is telling that. So, how many of you think you acknowledge what Krishna says, you realize you are struggling? Or how many of you say, no, I am not? Okay, let me give a third option. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you'll get more confidence to raise your hand. So, what's your option? Any option? Option number one, you feel like you have realized you are struggling. Okay, how many of you say, I'm not struggling? How many of you say, maybe, maybe not? Sometime I struggle, sometime I don't? How many of you agree with that? Let me tell you why Krishna says you are struggling. Imagine you have gone out in a hot sunny day and you did some activity, physical activity, you become thirsty, you come back. When you're thirsty, you're really looking for water. When you come back home, you go to the fridge, open the fridge, get a cold water, pour in the glass, and you gulp it down. How many of you will say like, wow, maja aa gaya? Yes? Agreed? Everyone will have that experience? Imagine you're kind of sitting in an AC environment, quite comfortable. Now I bring to you 200 rupees liter Himalayan water. पियो. कल तो बहुत बोला था मजा आ गया. पियो. Now if I force that water down your throat, would you have that experience again? Water is same. In fact, I have got you better quality water. I have got you the pure mineral water of the Himalayas, Himalayan water. Why are you not having that experience? The reason is because you were thirsty and you're not thirsty now. What is thirst indicates? Suffering. The more you suffer, the more, or not the more, to that degree you'll say, maja aa gaya. So our experience of happiness is directly proportionate to our suffering. For example, if you had your lunch, full plate, up to the neck, now I bring a nice baked hot from the oven pizza. You'll be so kind and considerate of everyone now. थोड़ा सबको खिलाओ ना यार. मेरे पास ही क्यों? हाँ या ना? Because you cannot take it. Imagine that pizza is your favorite. Maybe if you would manage, you would manage a very small bite. But imagine when you are hungry. I remember it was back in 2005, there were floods in Chennai. If anyone of you from South India, there was a massive floods in Chennai during Diwali time. And I had made my decision that I'm going to go back to home. So I remember walking into Chennai up to this much water, reaching a station finally. So when the train started, ours was the only train, the train which had a ticket. It was also the only train which started towards North India in last 3 days. All the trains were cancelled. So you can imagine how many passengers would be in that train. So much passengers, overloaded. On top of it, because most part of the South India was flooded, the train did not go through its normal route. It went through the forest and whatnot. That train from Chennai to north would never go through Hyderabad, Sikandrabad. After 1.5 days, close to 36 hours it took just to reach Chennai to Sikandrabad. While on the way, the train did not stop anywhere because it was all flooded everywhere. There was not even a single bottle of water in the whole train. What to speak about food? Which means all of us who are in the train have now not eaten food or drank water. If not 1.5 days, at least for 1 day, because whatever supply was there is all over. Finally, when it reached Sikandrabad, it was refilled. When it was refilled at the pantry, it was chaos. Everyone was jumping over the pantry to get it. I remember right across me on the other side, there were all this serving staff and they were trying to handle the crowd. Somehow somebody managed that. वो मैगी का आता था ना, वो क्या कहते हैं आपका नूडल्स, 10 रुपए का डिब्बा आता था, मसाला नूडल, गर्म पानी डालो. Somehow somebody managed to get it, and you should have seen his excitement. मिल गया, मुझे आखिरकार मिल गया. And मैं सोचा था यार हद होती है, क्योंकि बेचारे ने 1.5 दिन से खाया नहीं है. तो look at his desperation. So the greater the suffering, To that proportionate degree you say, I am happy. Now you relate to what Krishna say. He is saying, Mana Shashtan Indriyani Prakriti Sthani. Arjuna, this is not what your life meant to be, but you have made a life like this. What you call as happiness is a mitigation of suffering. And tomorrow you again suffer. And when you gratify that suffering, mitigate the suffering, you say, I am happy. This is struggleful life. Arjuna says, no, my dear Lord, I am not struggling, I am enjoying my life. See, I am enjoying my life. And soon everything will be okay. Anyways, who has seen what will happen next after death? Life means to enjoy to the fullest. Why to care for anyone and anything? Sounds familiar? Some of you might be thinking also, अरे यार कहाँ Saturday evening में आ गया? आराम से enjoy करो, ये क्या साधु जी क्या क्या बता रहे हैं, जीवन में बचा कचा सुख भी छीन रहे हैं. Ignorance is bliss. इतना ज्ञान वर्धन क्यों करना था एक ही दिन में? You know, I can't go back and eat nicely also. I'll think, oh, I'm suffering, that's the reason I'm eating. You know? So now you agree this is what people say. Arjuna said, why, my dear Lord, I'm enjoying my life. Krishna says, hey, wait a second, you are a fool. You don't understand the reality. What reality? Krishna says, Shariram yadavapnoti yacchapi utkaramati ishvaraha Gritvaitani samyati Vayugandhani vashaya. Krishna said, Arjuna, the living entity in the material world carries his different conception of life from one body to another, as the air carries an homage. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. After every sunset, there is a sunrise, yes or no? After every Sunday, there is a Monday, yes or no? After every summer, there is a monsoon, or let's say after every monsoon, there is a summer or winter, yes or no? Everything is cyclical in this creation. Similarly, person takes birth, he grows, becomes old, he dies, again he takes birth. Like that, life goes on. So with that, I just saw the time is close to 8:20. We have gone a little over time for our today's session. I'll pause it here. We'll take the session again, continue next time. So I'll do a quick recap of what we've done so you don't lose the discussion here. We're trying to deal on the subject matter of dealing with anxiety. While discussing on subject of dealing with anxiety, we introduced you to the fundamental issue, which is discussed in Bhagavad Gita. And that is, although I know what is right and wrong, but sometimes, or in fact many times, I am forced to act against my will. Baladiva niyojita. Arjuna asked Krishna, why? Krishna said, Kamesha, Krodesha, Rajoguna, Samadbhava. Rajoguna, what is Rajoguna? At that point of time, I introduced you to the concept of modes of consciousness. Different people react differently to same situation, and I gave an example of a cap seller. There are three modes of consciousness: goodness, passion, ignorance. Mode of goodness means thoughtful reaction. Mode of passion means abrupt reaction. Mode of ignorance means devastation, victimhood, victim mentality. We spoke about that. And then Krishna goes on speaking about this lust as an enemy. Then we discussed about enemy. What enemy? Krishna says, Nitya Verina. Dushpurena Nalena. Just like I gave you an example. Enemies are a different nature. One, which you make an enemy when you're standing in a ticket line. Another enemy, somebody gives you supari. But Nitya Verina means life after life. It does not leave you in this life or the next life. And Dushpurena Nalena cha. What is lust? Lust means desires. Desires are fulfilled, you become proud, and there is desire plus one. Desire is not fulfilled, you become frustrated and anger. Desire remains as it is. Dushpurena Nalena cha. How much ever you try to satisfy, the fire keeps on blazing, it never gets satisfied. So to help you understand how this desire function, the lust function, I gave an example of 25th December and the new car. Then we said, okay, how do we defeat this lust? How do we overcome this baladiva niyojita? Krishna said, defeating the lust, first of all, find out where does the enemy resides. Where does the enemy resides? Resides as senses, mind and intelligence. Before we got into the discussion, we also spoke about how does this mind, intelligence, senses interact with each other. So to help you understand how senses, mind and intelligence work in conjunction with each other. I'll give you an example of Mithulal Mithaiwala. Eyes saw the sweet, mind had a longing desire, had a desire, pending desire that I want to eat those kachori. Send a signal back to intelligence, I want it. Intelligence said, well, you want it? First of all, you have to see how much money you have. And the hand goes into the pocket. We did that analysis to help you understand how scientific the information or the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, unfortunately, which we have been told today is a mythology or is an old textbook, etc., which you and I should have been reading from our childhood, have not even picked up today to read it. But we are glad, we are fortunate, we are happy, grateful to all of you that at least at this point of time in your life, you decided to at least come and hear about the subject matter. So we talked about the analysis of mind, intelligence, senses, and Krishna says, find out, first of all, defeat the enemy. First of all, you understand where the enemy resides. Enemy resides the three places, the senses, the mind, and intelligence. To help you understand that, how our life is compromised, we gave you an example of 15th August, where the army chief makes a three-tier solution, which is perfect in itself, because at each security gate, it has a security personnel which has compromised himself. So the 15th of August leads to destruction. Similarly, we move toward destruction again and again because our senses, mind, intelligence are compromised. Like this, so Krishna says, step number 2, if you want to defeat the enemy, the very first thing you want to do is control your senses, regulate the senses. So I said the process of yoga is all about getting rid of this. But how it begins with regulating the senses. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Yama, niyama, regulate the senses. Why regulate the senses? Then we spoke about how Krishna says, then Krishna says in 42nd verse, Arjuna, know that greater than your dull matter is senses, greater than the senses mind, greater than the mind is intelligence, greater than the intelligence is soul. So we raised the question, soul? Whom does the soul belong to? We came to 15th chapter where we began our discussion. Mamamam sujivaloka jivbhuta sanada. Krishna says, you're my part and parcel. My part and parcel means you're supposed to be happy. You're supposed to be Satchitananda. You are supposed to have eternal life full of knowledge and full of bliss. But you are struggling. Then I helped you understand how you are struggling. Give an example of a water. One day you are thirsty, you say fantastic. When you're not thirsty, even the most expensive water, you cannot take a sip of it. Problem is not with the water. The problem is your happiness depends on your suffering. Your happiness is directly proportional to suffering. More you suffer, more you say you're happy. So what you experience happiness is mitigation of suffering. Therefore Krishna says, my dear son and daughter, you're not meant to live this life. Mana shashtani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. But Arjuna says, my dear Lord, I'm enjoying. Krishna says, you're not enjoying. And that discussion will continue when we meet next time. So far we have discussed this. And in the very opening statement I said about there are 4 types of sounds. Anyone remember those 4 types of sounds? You don't have to give me the Sanskrit name. But even if you can say what were the English names of those sounds. The Vaikari sound. You can perceive manifested sound. What is the second sound? Intellectual. That is said to be Madhyame. The sound of decision. I should do this, I should not do this. We all have that experience. And the third sound, mental sound, that is Prakriti, desires, I want this, etc., etc. And the fourth is Para. Then we said, all creation have manifested from sound. Therefore in scriptures it is said, if a person takes to this mantra meditation, the Para sound, this Para sound can reform or purify all other 3 sounds. And it is through the sound you can subjugate, subdue or mitigate or pacify your mental sound and intellectual sound. And so much so, you can purify your, Vaikari. So it becomes very sweet and pleasing when you speak to others. But all begins with taking shelter to Para sound. And what is that Para sound that we take shelter to? We recommend everyone to at least, just for the sake of experimenting with yourself, yoga means to experiment with oneself. Do this exercise for 15 minutes. Every morning get up, find a neat place, sit down in a cool composed position and chant. Repeat after me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. We established the science behind this mantra meditation in the very first two sessions when I quoted a study from the neuroscientist of Stanford and Harvard, that how mantra meditation really pacifies the mind. Today I gave the Shastric references, and we'll take this discussion about dealing with anxiety further in the next session when we meet. So today, two things we talked about. One is how to overcome this lust, and second, we talked about lust, how to overcome. We also spoke about a little bit of cognitive process that happens within us, how the interaction of intelligent mind and senses takes place. With that, I will pause here. All of you would be hungry for prasad, the mercy of the Lord, in the form of a food. So we'll begin that. Would anyone have any thoughts, any clarification, or any question to clarify? Enough people to give you suffering. You don't have to shop for suffering. You ask your neighbor, he'll give you. Suffering comes uninvited, isn't it? Does anyone invite suffering? So why do you even have to think of, should I go and shop for suffering? Yes, people are really shopping for suffering when they go and buy alcohol and smoke and drugs. Aren't they shopping for suffering? They're spending their hard-earned money for what? To go and spend further money on the doctor, on your bills. It's just, people are purchasing suffering, in fact. Anything else? Yes. Okay, the question over there. Okay. Wherever you go. Go ahead.
Just a doubt. In that the diagram, you haven't mentioned anywhere brain. Of course, mind is there.
Haven't mentioned?
Brain.
Brain is a hardware which is very much
Correct.
part of the body.
Correct.
It is part of your senses only, the gross body.
So from senses, they are going to the mind. That is
Yes.
through brain only.
Well, that is not very much clear about. First of all, the mind is not part of brain. Mind is distinctive than the brain. Mind is part of your consciousness, which is present all over the body. Therefore, in the very first session, we raised the question, who suffers and enjoys? The moment you hit, you have an experience of pain. It is an experience by a mind, which means it is present all over the body. Brain, it has a different set of function, but somehow we have very closely connected it to the function of cognitive. We think brain is the function, is the platform where all cognitive functions take place, is where all the thinking takes place. Maybe it's just a hardware part from where this thing gets manifested, but these are not two interconnected things. Science even does not have much understanding on the subject of mind. Science, modern day science, call mind to be spiritual, antimatter, and they call brain to be matter. Therefore, I believe I quoted that problem, body and mind problem, right? In the third session of mind management, a French scientist by the name of Descartes, he coined this problem, body-mind interaction. How body and mind interacts? Because mind is spiritual, body is physical. Therefore, we quoted from the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Upadrashtanumanta cha varta bhoktama ishvara. How body-mind interaction happens. This is part of our previous discussions, like that. Brain has got nothing to do with it. Hare Krishna. Anything else? Okay, we have one or two hands over here.
Could you please elaborate more intellectual and mental sound?
Intellectual. The function of intelligence is to make decision, discriminate between right and wrong. And your ability to discriminate between right and wrong is based on how much or what learning you have had on a subject about what is right, what is wrong. So that's what intellectual sound. Whereas the sound is, analysis. If I do this, I'll have it. No. I should not do this. Maybe I should do that. All that analysis, that is the sound of intelligence. Mental sound is morally about desires, longing, feelings. This is all the function of mind. That is mental sound. I want this. I am feeling so sad because of it. All that chattering that happens constantly, that is your mental sound.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I attended last session also. So, in a last session, you said like 90% of my body, 95% is not my control. Actually, we used to heard this since childhood, like everything that's happening, doing by God. Even like I remember one chaupai in Ramayana, there Tulsidas ji saying, कर बिनु कर्म करे विधि नाना बिनु पग चले सुने बिनु काना. सब कुछ ईश्वर कर रहा है. If I am wrong in somewhere, I am not wrong by my choice. I am wrong by God force. If everything He is doing, then why we should worry? Why we are thinking like we should control this, we should not control? Let it be. Am I right?
This is another side of atheism. What does the atheist say? Everything in the body is happening because of DNA and RNA. The molecules firing up because of which happens. So if an atheist has to go to the court and if the lawyer or the judge asks, why did you shoot or why did you slap that person? What did atheist say? मैंने तो कुछ किया ही नहीं, मैं तो कुछ करता ही नहीं. There are molecules which are firing in my body. They got agitated, got fired, my hand got up in the sky, I slapped him. Catch my molecules and punish. Similarly, another side, flip side of the atheism is, हम तो कुछ करते नहीं, सब कुछ भगवान करते हैं. So both are the same thing, part of the same coin. That is not how Bhagavad Gita talks of this world. Krishna says very clearly, this world has been created, fulfill your desires. Srila Prabhupada gives a very beautiful example. He says during Second World War, the war was happening in the sides where both were praying to the God. My dear Lord, let Germans die and our husbands survive. The German wives were saying, my dear God, let our husbands survive and Britishers die. You happen to be God, how will you make a decision? You happen to be a God, how will you make a decision? Both are praying. Therefore Krishna said, let there be a rule of law, karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. I would appear personally in this world again and again. Krishna says, Paritranaya sadhuna vinashaya chadushkratam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Again and again. I will come. I would give this wisdom literatures. I will send my representatives, the great sages like Vyasa, Madhva, Ramanuja, Srila Prabhupada, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and whatnot. I would come here to guide the mankind. But you are responsible for your action. Why? Because the relationship between us and the Lord is of love. The love cannot be forced. We're not following some radical path. You believe in our God or else you are kafir or you are Satan. Love has to be out of free will. Otherwise love has no value. And if there is a free will, then you own the responsibility of your decisions. So we being in this world is not the working of the Lord. You being in the world and living a life of your choice, you damn be grateful for the Lord that He gave you the opportunity to breathe and live your life. Rather than being grateful for the opportunity that we have, we do what rubbish we want to do and then we say, मैंने क्या किया है? सब उसका करा धरा है. जब कर रहे थे तब नहीं सोचा था.
नहीं, but while doing, if I am thinking, I am not doing this. मैं बिना कर्ता बने कर्म कर रहा हूँ, तो कर्म तो ईश्वर ही करवा रहा है.
That's the point.
फिर यहाँ
ईश्वर कहाँ करवा रहा है?
यहीं पे तो डाउट है ना. या तो हम ये भरोसा छोड़ दें कि सब ईश्वर कर रहे हैं, या फिर हम ये सोचें कि जो भी हो रहा है वो सब सही हो रहा है.
आपने जो भी सोचा है उसको साइड में रखिए, भगवत गीता पढ़ के नहीं सोचते आ करिए. आप टीवी सीरियल से सुन सुना के संस्कार टीवी में अनाप शनाप लोग के कहानी सुनकर आ गए हैं जो कथा के नाम पे धंधा करते हैं. They're making a business, living their life, eating tobacco and giving big Bhagavatam pravachan. And then you say, because I heard from such and such saint. How do you know somebody is saintly if you don't know what is his personal life? He comes up on the stage and tell people do this, do that, but in his personal life he lives a lavish life. He does all nonsense, but he comes and tells you, do this and do that. Because he has a huge following, we think he's a saintly person or she's a saintly person. So, problem is nowhere a problem with our own laziness. We have never taken an opportunity, time to really understand who we are. How does this world functions? If you board a train without a ticket, would TC be right or wrong to punish you?
He's right.
So then how do you say कि मुझे तो भगवान ने ट्रेन में चढ़ा दिया? टीसी जी भगवान को पकड़ो.
हो सकता है भगवान मुझे पनिश कराना चाह रहे हो टीसी से.
हाँ तो सही बात है, पनिशमेंट एक्सेप्ट करो फिर.
Yes, accept
ये
it.
मत बोलो कि भगवान के द्वारा हुआ है. Nobody would accept this. No rule of law would accept this. No law book or no Vedic book accepts this fact कि भगवान मुझसे करा रहा है. If भगवान मुझसे करा रहा है, so what is the difference between good and bad? There's no difference. The statement means you cannot do anything unless the God sanctions. But the God sanctions because you wanted it. Man proposes, God disposes. But who wanted it at the first place? I. And the God gave you the facility to fulfill that desire. So how did you do it? By the grace of the Lord. But who wanted it? Who wanted it? I. So who owns the responsibility? Therefore Krishna says very clearly, I am not responsible for anyone's actions. What is right and wrong, I have instructed in Bhagavad Gita. So you understand what is the right action and wrong action. Okay?
Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.